What do you guys suggest people do to modify their environment to make their bodybuilding practical, to make it easier?
So if we're talking contest prep, like my thought is like, okay, what's the most important thing outside of yourself? It's your family, right? Friends and all that. So to me, for me personally, I'll sit down and talk with my wife. Hey, I'm getting ready to start this prep. This is what I need. This is what to expect. And not to say, hey, everything's catered about me, but I want her to be aware of, what this process is going to entail, the things I'll have to do, so that way there's an understanding, that she knows what I'm going to be doing. At the same time, she can voice her concerns or questions or whatever. So that way we're in a sense on the same page. So we're able to support each other. I think that's super important. And, same thing with friends. There's a lot of people out there that, when they contest prep, their friends don't fully understand the extent of what they have to do. And it's like, especially when they get in the social settings, if there's, let's say, alcohol involved, or, hey, going out to dinner a lot and things like that, like some of that stuff, people just don't understand why you're not participating in this as much as you once were before. So I just think in general, in a nutshell, like communicating, to those around you of these new goals, of this new process that you're going to be partaking in, and let them know kind of how that's going to unfold, so people know what to expect. So it just makes your environment from that aspect, the social environment aspect, a little bit easier to go by. And then it's like, okay, from there, all right, so now I need to have my daily flow like really well, so it's stress free. So when am I going to do my cardio? When am I going to train? What are my work hours? How's family life going to be like? So for me personally, I structure my day because I'm a structure freak. Like my wife will tell you, like everything has to be aligned, otherwise I'm stressed. So it's like, okay, I'm getting up at this time. I'm doing my steps at this time. I'm working from this time to this time. I'm training at this time. So everything's kind of in line. So it's basically like Groundhog Day almost every day. Every day looks the same. Um, so to me, I think about it as its structure, its stability, right? Because you know what to expect. There's a lot of stability there. Same thing with my kids. I want to make sure that they have like their daily flow. They have a structure. They're following it. So it just creates a stable environment. And then it's easier to assess too, like what's working, what's not working. So it's easy to make those adjustments you do need to make. So to me, if I can get my daily flow to really just, go really well, where I don't have to really think about it too much, my body and my mind just seem to thrive in that environment, more so than a bunch of just chaos, if that makes sense. So that's for me, like when I go to set up a prep. And with my athletes too, like whatever the goal is, again, it goes back to, hey, I need to set a structure, and it needs to be a little more rigid. And then again, once you get into that flow of that system, then you can see what works, doesn't work, and then you can help make those adjustments. I know people are probably like, what adjustments do you guys keep talking about? It's like there's so much context, as you guys know. And without context, it's hard to make a judgment call. So you need to really know, if you're coaching, like what your athlete's context is. Like if they can't train in a specific day, why can't they train that day? Or they did X amount of volume that you assigned and it made them feel this way. Why? Okay, what do I need to change to make things better? So it's basically an evolution. It's just a process that's ongoing process. But I'm kind of rambling now, so I'm gonna let Brad talk.
One of the things that you just said, Jeff, that I was making my little note here on, is with that context. Like sometimes people think they can't do something when they really can. So like you said, for example, why can't this person train on this day? And you need that context, and you need to find out, why that is. Well, I can't train on this day because, that's my lowest energy day, and I just don't feel up to training, and you can sometimes finagle the plan such that, okay, well, that's going to be our easy day then, because maybe this person really likes to train and they want to go to the gym. They just don't feel like they can go there and perform to the way that such and such a way says to do it, or that so and so says to do it, you know. Whereas if you get that context, that could be a very easy day that they go in and they do their practice singles if they're a power lifter, you know, or they could go in and do their BFR work, you know, if they're a bodybuilder or something like that. But that was one of the things that really stuck out to me, is how many times people think that they can't do something, not because they physically can't or they don't have time. They just don't think that they should do it because of X, Y, and Z. And that when you really need to kind of pull that context out of them.
That context is huge. That's probably a podcast in itself, is context. Because a lot of people ask, hey, how much volume should I do? Hey, they say I should be doing 20 sets a week. Well, okay, let me give you context. So, hey, we got this one guy who's a college student. He goes to college maybe 10 hours a week. And the other 30, 40 hours a week, he's playing video games. He doesn't have a job. He doesn't have to work. He lives at home. He's got all this free time. Maybe he can do 20 sets a week with no issues at all. Recovers well, performs well. But then you have this other guy over here who is a construction worker. He works 10 to 12 hours a day, hammering nails all day. He's physically just spent. So maybe 20 sets a week for him isn't optimal. So it might be, hey, maybe it's half that or a third of that. So again, context is so huge. And I think the reason I'm kind of bringing this stuff up is because we're talking about those behaviors, Steve, where people, like Brad's saying, we have to follow according to X, Y, and Z, like an external information source. And that external information source is a generalization. So it gets people in the ballpark, like, hey, okay, let me start there. Okay, now that we're starting there and we're doing it, you know, month, 2 months, whatever, then you start to realize how it's starting to impact ourselves. And I think what's really valuable is that we should be taking notes on how things are making us feel. I know if I'm not mistaken, I think Andrea takes a lot of notes on how things feel. So she can look back on those notes and go, okay, I was doing this. This is how I felt. So she could then take that information and go, okay, maybe I need to change things based on that notes. Or, hey, that stuff's working really good. Let me keep it in there. But I think, again, a lot of us with those behaviors when we're doing bodybuilding or fitness in general, we really get, a lot of people get married to the generalizations out there. And we got to remember that you need to be independent too at the same time.
And that's one thing I would say. A lot of the bodybuilders that I do work with, obviously, it's typically people who've been way too zoomed in, and this stuff has like consumed their whole life, and they're trying to essentially get their life back. It's amazing how much simplifying someone's protocol can not only lead to better progress, but like make their life that much better. So it's like you said, some people think, like you said, I need to do 20 sets of volume here and then do this and that and this and that. Where it's like, it's amazing what happens in those situations when you drop volume and raise food, how it's like all these things that maybe they were afraid to give up or that were taking up so much time, actually doing less of those things yields better progress. And I've seen that happen countless times, like doing less and simplifying the process yield much better progress.
So the way I've been kind of looking at bodybuilding, I've for a while now, but like really lately, I've been really thinking about it. It's all like whether it's on a macro grand scale or a very micro scale. All what we're really wanting to do is manage supply and demand. So if we have this construction worker that's trying to do 20 sets a week and he's not recovering from it and he's beat up, like what do you think his life stress is? Like physically he's taxed. Mentally and emotionally, he's probably taxed. And if he's working that many hours, think of like, okay, what if he has let's put more context to it. What if he has a wife and kids? So now he's spending 10 to 12 hours a day at work. And now he's going to the gym for 2 or 3 hours because he has to get, quote unquote, all this volume in. I can almost guarantee you, like, wife and kids are like, why is dad neglecting us? So there's going to be a ramification of that. There's going to be the elevated stress there. So that demand for this person is so elevated. The stress is so elevated that how can they make gains in that environment? And if they do make gains, what kind of quality of life does this person have? So my thought is like, hey, like I said, if you were to like you're saying, Steve, sometimes you chop people's demand down. Well, all of a sudden the supply goes up. I mean, obviously, if they're feeling better physically, mentally, and emotionally, they're probably going to yield just as much, if not more, progress with less because they're becoming more efficient with their process. They're having a good environment both inside and outside the gym. So it comes back again. It's like learning the individual that you're working with, understanding the context and the environment that you're trying to create and set up. And again, I can look at the science and go, yeah, okay, it says we need 10 to 20 sets. Can I apply that? And if the answer is yes, great. Okay, I can apply it. Let's make sure that life quality is good too. Because I don't know about you guys, but man, I want to have fun when I'm doing this. I want to enjoy my training. I want to feel good. I want to enjoy like my contest preps. Yeah, I want to win and all that stuff, but man, I want to do it where I can look back and go, man, it was so much fun. I want to do it again. And I know there's a lot of people that come to me and they're just like, hey, I've been training 6 days a week and I'm trying to do everything I'm supposed to do according to X, Y, and Z, but I feel like shit in so many words. So to me, it's like in order to get to where I am, like number one for me is priority for longevity is like you have to enjoy what you're doing. And that may or may not be according to what X, Y, and Z is saying. And that's okay, because as long as you, like, again, if you're practical with how you're doing things, it's going to create there's going to create an environment where there's not that much stress and you're going to be able to enjoy it a lot more.
Mm-hmm. And touching right the same thing as like we're talking about environment and enjoyment. I mean, just a simple little thing that I noticed that I didn't realize had such a huge impact on my enjoyment was my gym environment, like the gym I was training in. Yep. I had no idea like my environment of where I trained would make such an impact on my enjoyment. But for like the longest time, I was just not enjoying my training. I was so burned out. And a large portion of that was just where I was training. It's the gold. It was the Golds in Venice, which is like, the Mecca and super popular. And it's a great gym, but it was just so crowded and it was such a mess. And it was just like, and I had no idea that like that environment was what was causing one of the main things that was causing me to like hate my training. And I switched gyms and it was instantly. I mean, the amount I was enjoying my workouts went up tenfold. Just going to a different place, having new equipment. Now it's not as busy. It's not as hot. Like I had no idea that would have that kind of an impact until I actually experienced that.
Yeah, it makes a huge like even for me in my home gym, like if the garage floor needs sweeping, like if it gets a little on the dirtier side, I'm like, fuck, I can't train. I got to sweep this shit first. Just because it just makes me, like when I see a clean floor, it just makes me feel better. Like, okay, this is a better environment. So that goes a long ways. Of your like think of your environment, like again, your daily flow, like setting up that type of a flow where everything is just really pristine. Like you're going to thrive in that environment. I put a post up on my story the other day where I put a messy desk and a clean desk.
I saw that.
I said, so the people who have the messy desk, they don't make as much progress as the people with the clean desk. So that same principle applies like with most things in life, not just with like bodybuilding and fitness, in my opinion.
And I feel like that environment stuff is sometimes it's easy not to notice just because like we're so busy focusing on, well, maybe it's the exercises I'm doing. Maybe it's my calorie intake. Maybe it's my volume. Maybe it's my frequency. When it's like, maybe it's none of that stuff. Maybe it's like the environment. Maybe it's just the time of day that I'm training, or it's like that simple little stuff. It's like, if just switching that stuff, if we're talking about behaviors and environment, like just switching that little stuff can make things much more enjoyable.
Well, even like music choice, like you get a good song, you're like, yeah, let's get in there and bang some shit out. But you're listening to, like for me, listen to country music, I'm like, oh dear Lord, it's gonna put me to sleep. But yeah, so I'll go in there and my wife's in there working out and she loves her music super loud. Like it shit's so loud. I'm up here in my office going, damn, it's so loud. But she's got her Spanish music just cranking and she's going at it. Where if I train with her, I'm like, this is giving me a headache. Like I just can't train with that loud of music. So that kind of stuff makes a huge, huge difference.
Mm-hmm. And even like when I think about, like, I use step totals a lot with my clients, and it's like, priority one is we got to get our steps done. So like, if you have to do what you got to do. And so like, of course, like sometimes like somebody, like they might have to like walk around their house to like get their steps in, just because they're committed to their goal and they're like, I'm going to make this thing happen. But ideally it's the same thing. I want them to like create strategies where they're getting their steps in a way that's enjoyable. So it's like, I have clients that to either take their dog for a walk, or it's like I have a client that's big into archery, so he'll shoot like one arrow at a time, and then he'll just walk, collect the arrow, walk back, shoot it again. And he does a ton of steps that way, because he's like actually enjoying the process. It's like it's just keeping him moving the whole time.
Yeah.
And another big one, talking about environment and steps, is like, instead of, it's almost like, even if you can like do your steps at your house or walk around your neighborhood, some people just find it better to like just go to the gym if it's only 5 or 10 minutes away, just to totally change their environment and like, okay, I know I'm here to get my steps in. I can just like do my thing, get on the treadmill, and just kind of zone out. And it's just like putting himself in a different environment makes it the whole thing more enjoyable, versus like just walking around their house or just walking around their neighborhood, because now there's other things floating around in their head. Like if they're at home when they're trying to get their steps in, they're also might get interrupted by something, or the doorbell rings, or their phone's going off, or it's all this stuff, and it's easy to like not enjoy it as much. But like, I know, like Jeff, I know that was one of the reasons why you used to wake up and do your recumbent bike in the morning, was because it was before anyone else was up. You kind of had your own little environment in that office where it's like no one's bugging you, and you can just get lost and do your pedaling and be done.
Yeah, that, and also getting like starting my day like walking outdoors. Like when I was prepping, I would just walk outside. Like we have some nice levees, like some good scenery, lots of wildlife. So just getting out there, getting my steps in, not just like, great, I'm getting this physical activity in, but it set the mood for the day. Like it just got me, like just moving my body felt good. And just mentally I felt good when I came back from it. Versus now I probably need to get back out there and walk, but getting up and having 2 cups of coffee and sitting there watching the news, and that's pretty depressing lately. So I need to stop. Like, again, that's creating a bad environment. Like I'm realizing, okay, I need to stop that and get myself in a better environment, because it makes me more productive when it comes to like my family life and work life, like to be in a positive environment. So that stuff goes huge. And I think for Brad, him working out too, you're the best around. I mean, that early right there, just Karate Kid soundtrack, man. You should see his shit when he deadlifts to that. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, my environment right now, I don't know what it is, but I just love getting in my little man cave in my little Billy Funk Memorial Gym, put on a movie or put on a documentary or something that gets me outside of my little room, Netflix has got a ton of documentaries right now. I just got done watching Rich Froning's documentary where he won the CrossFit Games like 3 years in a row. And it talks about his training. 4 years in a row. Yeah. But yeah, I love the environment's different when I put a movie on or a documentary like that than if I'm just in there on my own, or I'm just in there, training to music or, what have you. Yeah, it's always better. Even if it's a crappy session, it's a less crappy session if I'm watching Sylvester Stallone in Over the Top.
Or Karate Kid, right, Brett?
When you switched from the outside gym and you brought that inside, did that make a difference in your training?
Oh, from outside on my back porch to inside?
Yep, when you moved it inside. How did that little switch, did that have any impact on what you're doing? Or
Yeah. I mean, it was some positive and then some negative. Positive was obviously I could be a little bit more consistent because it's hard to get out there and train in the snow.
I was going to say,
and now even if it's snowing,
it was pretty cold in some of those workouts I'd watch him. It was like, it's snowing and he's squatting. I'm like, that's 2 things. One, it's crazy and inspirational at the same time. I'm like, the dude's out there squatting in the snow makes me feel like, and I'm over here in a warm garage. Okay.
So yeah, I mean, obviously my consistency went way up, as far as getting my weekly volume in, like you talked about, Steve. But, at the same time, I think there is what is the original like definition of gymnasium? I think that's like something outside, isn't it? Something like that. Um, I know that I feel like sometimes I'm craving, I guess I should say, sunlight. And I really never felt like I needed to make an effort to go out in the sun when I had that out there. You know what I mean? When I was getting the sunlight and I was getting the vitamin D, I don't know. It was a very different feel, especially in the summertime when I was always out there, training and whatnot. But yeah, I think all in all, you weigh the positives and the negatives. There's probably more positives moving that weight room inside than there was negatives.
Yeah. Well, I think just the last thing that comes to my mind for the environment, and then if you guys have anything else about environment, but I think it's just like a simple like low hanging fruit, and that's just not, if you can help it, not having like tempting foods in your house. Like if you're in prep or you're getting ready to start a prep or you're in a fat loss phase, like just not having like super tasty foods chilling in your fridge or in your cabinet, like that way they're not even there to tempt you. I don't know. I feel like it's an easy one that's often like overlooked. And the other thing being like, if you do have that stuff, then I found it's helpful for me to like always buy like the individually wrapped stuff versus like the big like cartons of stuff, like instead of having a massive bag of like Doritos, getting like the 100-calorie servings of Doritos, like those little things. But like, yeah, I don't know. When I think about environment, like, I don't know. I used to have a lot of clients that would, they used to have like, when they would do road trips and stuff, they always had these habits of having all this junk food and candy. And like, it was like part of their routine was when they would travel, they would eat all this good food. And a lot of times it's like, hey, if you don't buy it, it's not in the car and it's not going to tempt you. And that sounds like a super stupid, simple fix, but it works for a lot of people. It's like if you just keep yourself where you don't get too hungry and you don't have that stuff chilling right next to you, you're not going to eat it. And like me, if I've had a long day at work and I finish up and I'm tired, there's no way I'm about to like get out and fight traffic to go buy some ice cream. I'm not going to spend 20 minutes to go buy ice cream if I'm tired, if I'm not that hungry. Like, I'll just eat something here.
On the flip side, I'm gonna be the antagonist here. So like my situation with a family, like I can't expect, hey Susanna, don't buy peanut butter or don't buy Lucky Charms for the kids or don't buy this ice cream. Like so, in that situation, it's almost like I have to remind myself what my goal is and why I'm doing things. Like I have to like embrace, what I'm trying to accomplish, and sometimes that means, oh, you know what? I have to have that third D, discipline. I have to follow through with that. So that's just on the flip side. Like sometimes I know there's probably certain individuals that, let's say, don't have the environment where they only have to think about themselves. Like they don't have, let's say maybe they're not married or they don't have a significant other that lives with them. So a single person might find it easy. Hey, I'm not going to buy this, but someone's, wife or husband might be like, well, can't really tell them not to, buy these types of foods. So that's kind of my thoughts there. You got anything on that, Brad?
Yeah,
you're a dad. You're a family guy.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, I utilize that strategy more so for my folks that are less spreadsheety. You know what I mean? I'm not having them track macros. I'm not having them track calories. But yet, we still got to have the fundamental in place, right? If you want to lose weight, we have to be in a caloric deficit, at least 4 out of the 5 days or 6 out of the 7 days or what have you, whatever the format is. And so if they can, yeah, just limit the size of the bag, get the 100-calorie bags. Don't have that stuff in your house. Or, like for me, I'll just have like a little simple replacement, Go ahead and get yourself a jar of PB2. You can have the PB2 and not have the peanut butter. Save the peanut butter for, the family. And then when you want your PB fix, have the PB2, or have some sort of a replacement that's kind of like, that's yours. And know that it fits with the context of our goal right now. We are trying to lose weight. we have to be in a caloric deficit, but we don't want to track macros, or we don't want to track calories or things like that. We got to modify things. We've got to develop strategies, for that person. And those are a couple of the ones, one being the one you mentioned, Steve. And then also just some sort of a replacement, baked lays instead of regular lays. Whatever it is that you can get that fix and still have it kind of in a healthy way. Because the one drawback is that sometimes, we're not in the healthiest sport and we can develop bad habits.